type of digital emoji or something. Happy birthday and many more. Happy birthday. Now, another celebration we have is that we have a meeting of online presenters, Toastmasters Club, and we have a special guest. And speaking of guests, please note that in order to be a member of our club, you must be a current or former active member of Toastmasters International. You must have completed at least 6 Toastmasters official speeches. However, if you have substantial relevant presentation experience, you may apply for membership after demonstrating your abilities in a 2 to 3 minute speech delivered during one of our club meetings. All requests for membership are subject to approval by the members of our club. If you have not already done so, please change your panel to ensure it shows your name and role if you have one. Let us know if you're a guest. We love to include you in our table topics. All you do is hover over your video, right-click the 3 dots, and select Rename. We have members and guests from many countries throughout the world. Thus, as a professional organization, we ask that you please be aware of language or word usage that may be considered offensive or otherwise insensitive due to cultural differences. And please note that we will be recording the meeting. Your video and audio contribution may be used for club marketing purposes. Also, please mute your microphone when you are not speaking. And now it is my pleasure to introduce and welcome our club president, Marianne Grady.
Well, hello, 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 and welcome everybody. My name is Marianne Grady, and tonight our Toastmaster of the Day, Karthika, has dubbed our theme, Toastmaster Appraisal Day. Now, I'm a former HR professional, and I have to say, appraisals were not a fun time in the office. People were really nervous, people were really upset, but you have to do them. And why were they upset? And I think it's because a lot of people don't really see themselves as others do. And so when they're heard from their manager and they had an idea in their head and they didn't gel, it was upsetting. But here in Toastmasters, we welcome feedback and we understand that it is just one person's opinion, but we should listen to it, think about it, and consider whether or not we need to make a change. And because of this process that we do, we learn and we grow. And I am so excited because tonight, my good friend Jack Levitt is going to be giving a presentation on elevating our evaluation skills. So I hope that you will learn a lot from him, as I have over the years, and I think you'll enjoy it. Now, we do have a lot of guests here tonight, and I'm going to save the guest visits until at the end, since we have so much going on here today and a lot of visitors, so we're going to keep moving. David, did you want something? I see your hand up.
No, that's just try and keep the timer visible.
Gotcha. Okay, everybody, David's in the corner there. But right now, I'm going to pass it right over to our Toastmaster of the Day, Karthika, and she will take it away. Let's put our hands together for Karthika.
Thank you, Marianne. Welcoming you all to today's special event with a special guest tonight joining us with Toastmasters, with online presenters. Every week, every Toastmasters meeting, every workshop adds value to a Toastmaster. Said that, Dr. Ralph C. Smedley, the founder of Toastmasters Club and author of the book, Personally Speaking, mentions no Toastmasters Club is fulfilling its obligation to its members unless it brings the maximum of training in the art of constructive criticism. When somebody says, your hands are inside the pocket during the whole of your speech, and when somebody says, I had difficulty hearing to you, wouldn't you be taking it personally? I think most of us will. Instead of working on its rectification, we take it on the other sides. Just Removing such obstacles and working on overcoming such instances is the heart of Toastmasters Club. We tend to search for potential remedies, techniques, effective coaching methodologies, and this plays quite important in Toastmasters Club. Understanding the importance of feedback that is significant in every Toastmasters Club is what we are going to understand today with our special chief guest. This is termed as evaluation in Toastmasters. Walking through this path, as Marianne has already mentioned, the theme for today's meeting is Toastmasters appraisal day. Before we get into today's meeting, I would like to call upon the significant role players who will be helping us to keep intact and keep on schedule the meeting all through our discussion. For this, first, I would like to call upon our grammarian to introduce the word of the day so that everybody gets a chance to use the word during their introduction. Grammarian Jim Barber, over to you, and we would like to know the word of the day. And please, the stage is yours.
Hi, Madam Toastmaster. Thank you for reminding me that I was the grammarian this evening. It had slipped my mind. I've been having some AV difficulties, and in sorting those out, I forgot I was the grammarian. I will be happy to step in and do that. However, I have also forgotten what the word of the day is, and I'm looking at through the chat. I don't see it. I'm going to depend on somebody to step up and remind me. Anybody?
Evaluation.
Evaluations, that's appropriate. I like that. Okay. I've heard from a high authority that the word of the day is evaluation. As grammarian, I will be listening for your usage of the word evaluation when you are speaking this evening. I will also be listening for rather any exemplary or any egregious uses of the English language, and I will note those at the end of the meeting. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
It was instant and it was quite significant that the word of the day is also evaluation. Okay. The second significant part of online presenters as well as any Toastmasters meeting is keeping the meeting on schedule, keeping it running within the time frame. And for this, we have David as a timer. David, why don't you give us a glimpse of your role and tell us how timing is important to Toastmasters meeting?
Sure, I will be providing the evaluation of people's ability to stay within time as the meeting progresses. As mentioned, I have my virtual hand raised to try and keep this little video box visible so that as I use the virtual backgrounds to show the timing lights, you might be able to see them. Zoom is tricky. Windows move all over the place, so you still might have to try and keep an eye out, but I'm the one to watch for if you want to know what time you are. And I will show those for each segment of the meeting. I think everybody knows the routine. I won't go into it in great detail.
Thank you, David. We got introduced to the word. We got the timing schedule and we got to know how much time frame that we are into. Now, it's time for us to understand how many times that we use a single word, how many crutch words that we use during our discussion. What is a meaningful derivation out of our expression? And this comes by analyzing and monitoring the number of crutch words that we use in our sentence. For this, I would like to call upon our counter, Sherry Blake, to introduce herself and the role for today.
Thank you so much, Kirtika. Again, my name is Sherry Blake, and this evening I will be your counter. My job is to note words and sounds that we use as a crutch or a pause, like so, you like, you know. I'm guilty of it. I'm sure you all are, but we're going to try to minimize those words. I'll be keeping track and I'll give a report after the meeting. Well, not after the meeting, during the meeting. Back to you, Kirtika.
Thank you, Sherry. That was instant. Next, it's quite important for us to monitor ourselves, like how we present during the online presentation. It's not only the words that we utter, it's also the body language, the hand gestures, the eye contact, within where we fit in, inside the frame, and many other aspects. This comes much more significant when you do a business presentation or when you do a presentation before many people who are there, who are unknown to the topic. That makes you to be aware of yourself in the way that you express, not only through words, in the way that you use your body language. So for this, we have a special role in Toastmasters, a watcher. Today, we have Andre Smellingo as our watcher. Andre Smellingo, over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Toastmaster of the evening. Hello, fellow online presenters, guests. I'm excited to see everyone. My role for tonight is the watcher. What I will be doing is something unique, I think, for online clubs. I will be paying close attention to how we look in this little frame, or maybe bigger frame, what we have in the backgrounds, how we act, and hopefully I will be able to make a few recommendations that will make the way you look much more outstanding than it is, hopefully. So I'll come back to you at the end of the meeting with my report. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster of the evening.
Thank you, Andrew. We get distracted when we speak. We need to have a check on what is happening in our chats. We have somebody who will assist us in this aspect. And for this, we have a chat monitor in our Toastmasters meeting. Today, Graham Cairns would be our chat monitor, and he'll be giving a glimpse of what he's going to do. Over to you, Graham.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. The chat monitor is a role that is almost exclusive to online presenters, although I do note some other clubs are doing it. My role as chat monitor is to monitor the chat. I mean, the name is on the tin, but there's two reasons for doing that. One is if you are, for example, the facilitator or the Toastmaster of a meeting, sometimes it's really difficult to keep track of what's happening in the chat. My job as chat monitor is to monitor the chat and let the person who needs to know what they need to know. But the other thing is that I keep tabs on comments that are being made and pithy sayings. One thing I would say about the chat, and Andre has made this point before, if we were in a brick and mortar meeting and somebody was speaking, you wouldn't chat to the person sitting next to you. You would consider that to be rude. And so unless there is a reason for you to be adding material into the chat while people are giving prepared presentations, I would ask you to consider whether you would whisper to your neighbour or whether you would wait until after the speaker is finished. That's all I'll say. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
I definitely love the way the usage of brick and mortar in Toastmasters meeting. Okay. Yeah. Before getting into today's session, let's organize today's meeting. The meeting is organized into three parts: a prepared speech section, a table topic section, as well as an evaluation section. And I'm not sure if we would be having a table topics today. Instead, we will dedicate our complete time to our workshop and the facilitator here with us. The objective of today's meeting is to understand how to deliver a quality feedback, describe the evaluation criteria to meet our objective, identify potential obstacles of a speaker as an evaluator, and to get advice from our leadership coach. This meeting is specifically designed to reach our goals, helping our Toastmasters in our club. Today, we have Jack Levitt, founder and principal of Levitt Executive Advisors, a business and executive coaching firm focused on leadership development, executive presentation coaching, and powerful team development. Jack's journey with Toastmasters started in 1992. He's a distinguished Toastmaster, co-founder of Leader Strong LLC, and one of the authors to a recently released book, C4, Building the Powerful Team, a tale of taking a team beyond high performance. He's here with us to conduct a workshop on the topic of an advanced critique of the Emperor's New Clothes. The workshop is focused on elevating our evaluations to an advanced level. I hope you all derive the complete benefit through online presenters as well. Now, I would like to call upon our workshop facilitator, Jack Levitt. Jack, the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests. Nice to see all of you. Tonight I'm going to share my screen so you can see exactly what I'm going to be talking about. Tonight I am going to be talking about an advanced critique of the Emperor's New Clothes. Can somebody remind me of the story of the Emperor's New Clothes? Actually, why can't I see it? Hang on. Who can remind me of the story of the Emperor's New Clothes? Hands?
I can if that would help.
Andrew, it's your
Thank you
birthday.
very much. The story of the Emperor's New Clothes was a cruel and mean ruler of a particular environment, kept doing things that his people that he was in charge of were very unhappy about. And one part of the story comes where he decides that he could get himself great clothes and put it on for the group to see during an open air presentation. What he did not know is that the people picking out the clothes for him conned him into saying that these were clothes and they were not. He went out to the group invisible in a full naked body, and the end of the story goes on from there.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody remember how the story ends? So we have this emperor who is convinced he has these great new clothes, and he is going out on a parade. He is feared and not well liked, and he is walking down the street in his birthday suit. And what happens at the very end? Who remembers?
Killed.
Graham, no.
There's a child who doesn't know that he's supposed to say what wonderful clothes these are, and he recognizes that the emperor has no clothes, and he points out the emperor's nakedness, and then everybody else says, oh, even a child can see this, so perhaps we shouldn't be trying to convince ourselves.
Thank you. Now, why do you think I picked that story to talk about evaluation? Can anybody guess?
Because our speech is naked.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Okay, but besides that, anything else?
We tend to whitewash evaluations. We put pretty clothes on speeches, on presenters, when we should be saying, hey, look, you know, you're naked. We need to work on ways to clothe you so that you feel better about you, so that your speech comes across better.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when I gave my previous workshop, and I think Deb Darby had seen it, my first workshop was called How to Present an Effective Evaluation or a Critique of the Emperor's New Clothes. And it talked about how you give an evaluation to a new speaker, how a new evaluator would speak to somebody who is earning their Competent Communicator Award. And you talk about, wow, you had a great introduction and you used fantastic body language and your vocal variety was outstanding and your hand gestures and your visuals were spectacular. But there are a couple of things I'd like you to see you do differently. I would like to see you move more about the stage, and I would like to see you have more of a presence in the screen. Overall, fantastic job. I can't wait to see your next speech. How many have heard that evaluation before? We have all heard that evaluation, but now we're advanced speakers. I see so many DTMs either showing on screen or I heard about them. So I want to talk about what the real purpose of what we're doing is. Dr. Maya Angelou said this. I'm sure we've all heard this in one form or another. I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Now, if we think about this, are people going to remember exactly what our hand gestures were when we're speaking? Probably not. And they may not remember the exact words, but people really walk away internalizing a feeling that they get from a presenter, whether that feeling is happy, sad, making you think, challenging your mind, whether it's emotional, whether it's nostalgic, something about the way they make you feel is what every speaker tries to do. Now, obviously, members deliver presentations to improve their skills, but their objective is to leave you with a message so when the meeting's over and you leave, you remember them. I mean, there are some members out there who just want to develop the skill and really focus on how am I going to use my hands, but then they forget about what the real purpose of their presentation is. Using gestures is there to supplement the overall message of creating something memorable. And our job as evaluators is to let them know how well they did. So the evaluation pitfall, as I call it, is not being able to see the forest for the trees. I'm using a bunch of great expressions tonight. Does anybody want to take a stab at defining this one for me? Let's see a different hand up. Joni. Is it Joni? Can't hear you. You're very, very faint.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, better.
Okay. Overall, people look at the big picture. The king was the king and hierarchy says he's important, as opposed to the individual things that matters, all the small things that go together to make it an overall view.
I'm going to flip that around. When you can't see the forest for the trees, you're walking into a group of trees and saying, wow, there's an oak over there, and there's two maples. Ooh, is that a fir over there? And maybe a cypress, and really noticing all the details about what is making up this group of trees. But if you would have taken a look maybe a half mile back and you look at that group of trees, you would have seen that it's not just a few trees put together, but it's a forest. So when you are in the details of something, sometimes you forget what the big picture looks like. And the idea here is to remember the big picture for an evaluation is, how did I feel when you deliver the speech? And then talk about the things the speaker did effectively to make you feel that way, or the things the speaker could have done differently to impact you further or more powerfully with their message. What were the tools they used? What were the tools they could have used? And of course, we don't rewrite a speech for anybody, but we suggest ways that the speaker can use the different tools that they picked up all along the way in the different paths that they've explored. So I propose, here I talked about this. I see maple trees, I see pine trees, I see elm trees, versus here are the equivalent messages that you would get in a Toastmasters meeting, especially one that is a community club that always has new speakers and evaluators coming in. Vocal variety, gestures, notes, strong opening, moving around the stage. So it's the equivalent of naming the trees, but who is talking about the message who is talking about the feeling. In general, we don't hear that. And the speaker doesn't know, did I really achieve my true purpose? Which leads me to a bit of an anecdote. Speakers always have objectives when they're giving a manual speech. And hopefully they share those with the evaluator. I had a speaker deliver a speech once, and his objective was to teach the audience how to sell something. And this was a gentleman who was developing a business in delivering comedy presentations, and he was trying to have people help him sell it to corporations, to event planners, and things like that. And he gave a great presentation. It had great vocal variety, gestures, strong opening, used the stage well. But he forgot to tell us how to sell his product. He was so intent on telling us about his product that he told us nothing about selling it. As the evaluator, my job was to give him feedback. And I walked up to the lectern and I said, you delivered a great presentation, except I was expecting you to teach me something. You told me you were going to teach me how to go out and sell your product. I was already thinking about how I could go out and sell your product, and I was excited to hear it, and you didn't deliver it. And you could see around the room, people were a little squirmy that I was saying that, because people were not comfortable with the emperor being told that he wasn't wearing clothes at that point. And I actually had the audacity to ask that presenter to do it over again. Fast forward 6 months, he came back to the club to do it again, and lo and behold, we had switched Toastmaster years and we had a new VPE who didn't realize that I evaluated the speech the last time, and I got to evaluate the presentation again. And he got up and he did the exact same thing. And I got up and I did the exact same thing. Well, the look on his face was indescribable, and I promised that when he delivered it again, I would not be his evaluator. But if I would have let him pass and say, you did a fantastic job, you met every objective, he would walk out thinking that he now has a trained sales staff and that we're all ready to go, bring business in for him, and then he would have no referrals. What good am I doing him by saying you did a great job? So the idea of doing this is to really make sure that you are letting the person know that not only do they have the skill, but they have the message. So have this, I guess I just answered the question myself. Were these the same? How the speaker was the intended purpose and how they made you feel? Were they the same thing? Ideally, yes. Maybe the objective or the purpose also has some very specific skills that should be developed. So maybe, maybe not. But I want to show you the approach that I think we can use to really develop an effective advanced evaluation. The first one is talk about how you felt. Sherry, your presentation tonight made me think a lot about my childhood because you talked about your childhood, and I smiled a lot. And I'm walking out of here feeling lighter, and I want to thank you for that. What you did, what kinds of things did Sherry do? Well, she really painted very vivid images of what her childhood was like, and she had photos that were fantastic. But what I wish you had done, you talked all about your favorite candy being Bazooka bubblegum. It would have been so wonderful if you could have brought in some bubblegum, even if it wasn't Bazooka, and blown a bubble just to show us and make us all think about when we would blow bubbles as a child. Because it really It made me feel at home and safe and happy. But next time, if you can just add some props and some other stimuli for our memories, we'll walk out with a warmer, fuzzier feeling than we already are walking out with today. So I did incorporate all the different skills, but I talked about how those skills contributed to what I was feeling. And I believe Sherry's purpose was to make us all reflect on our own childhoods. Am I right, Sherry? That's what your purpose was, right?
This evening, I mean, when I gave my introduction?
No, when I just made up a speech about you.
Oh, yes.
Yes, okay, good. I knew it.
I'm like, where's all this coming from? Okay, back to you.
Yes. So I totally made it up. And tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to hear a speech from, I believe Graham's going to be speaking tonight. And instead of having one evaluator, what we're going to do is we're going to have a round robin evaluation. And in this round robin evaluation, I am going to facilitate it. And anybody who would like to volunteer, I'd ask you to prepare your evaluation in this format. Talk about how you feel. And what was it that evoked that feeling, or what was it that didn't evoke the feeling and next time could be tried differently? So before we do that, one more thing. Don't be that person. Not every speech needs improvement. I had the good fortune of being asked to evaluate past international president Dr. Dilip Abhaysekera in one of our meetings. And I guess they picked me because they thought, if anybody's going to find something wrong with Dilip, it's going to be Jack. And I got up there and I said, Dr. Dilip, thank you, because you provided a master class on how to deliver a presentation. And I used it as a teaching moment, talking about how he made me feel and talking about what he did. But I didn't have the part at the end, but what you need to improve is this. What I said was, this was masterfully done and shows why you have achieved the ranks you've achieved in Toastmasters. And everybody appreciated that. Let me tell you the converse of that story. I was in an evaluation contest once, and I thought the presenter gave a speech that was outstanding and heartfelt. He talked about losing his wife and some memories he had. It was beautifully told. He stuttered a bit and he showed emotion that added to it. And I said, I wouldn't change a thing about what you did. The next presenter came up and talked technically about what he did, but you stuttered a couple of times and you shouldn't be stuttering during a presentation. Because that person gave him the constructive feedback, she won the contest. Now, I still say to this day, 18-ish, 20-ish years later, that I should have won the contest, because you don't have to say something that is constructive or, pick on something that is not perfect in order to improve, to be an effective evaluator. So don't be that person, and be gracious. If somebody's fantastic, let them know. So now, does anybody have any questions? I have a little bit of time left. I believe, where's the time? Where'd he go? I have a little bit of time left. I'm on yellow, so I haven't hit red yet. Anybody have a question for me, or can we? Wow. Seeing none. I'm that good.
I have one, actually.
Okay.
Sometimes I feel that evaluators, yeah, it sort of relates to what you said. They work too hard to come up with that thought for improvement. And often when I'm not the evaluator, when I'm just the person in the audience who's listened to a really great speech, I think, that wouldn't have made it better. It really wouldn't have. Comes up a lot in terms of contest speeches, where everybody everybody gives the contestant a dose of advice. And if they tried to take all that advice, they would wind up with a horrible mismatch. So, anyways,
True.
statement more than a question, but maybe strategies for avoiding that.
Strategies for avoiding it are really using it as a teaching moment, as I said, and pointing out that there were so many opportunities and the speaker found so many great opportunities to use. They really hit every mark they wanted to hit, which shows a lot of practice, a lot of preparation, and a lot of skill. And show 2 or 3 specifics about what those were and how well they were used. And again, just lop off that end part about the improvement and say, I honestly thought that this was one of this speech hit every mark it should have hit. Deb Darby, you have a question? I'm red, so hurry up.
Did I understand you correctly in saying that you should end with what you need to improve?
No, thank you for that. Always want to use the Oreo. See, I hate calling it the Oreo method because the best part is the cream, and you don't want to hit the, you should work more on this in the middle. So I like to call it the liverwurst sandwich method, where there's a nice slice of rye, and then in the middle, there's the nasty tasting stuff. My apologies to any of those who like liverwurst. And then you finish it off with a little mustard and rye, so the taste isn't bad in the person's mouth. Deb, I thought you were going to ask me who the person was, and I'm not going to tell you who the person was who beat me in that contest. Kritika.
Thank you, Jack. The presentation is quite intuitive. I have a question.
Yes.
Yes. It's quite easy to make or be a prey with a judgment that is provided to you based on the way that you express yourself. Specifically when you speak, it's quite difficult to express yourself when you speak. How do you overcome such difficulty? How do you override the judgment that is put on you?
Wow. That takes practice. Takes practice, and it takes, that's why Toastmasters is so great. It creates an environment where you don't feel judged. And you know that the audience isn't judging you. They're really there to provide you with a gift of feedback. So when you know the audience isn't judging you, you have a tendency to feel less judged. Does that make sense? So it's about knowing your audience and trusting. And if you're in a strange audience, I always say to make some friends. You know, get somebody to smile at you. The minute you do, you feel safer and you don't feel as judged. Big picture, people do not have time to listen to a speaker. Sorry, the question was, I'm sorry, I'll get back to you, but the question was, how do you accept feedback without feeling judged? Was that the essence of it? Kritika? Because especially tonight, when Graham has a round robin evaluation and hears from a bunch of us, he can either hear it and accept it and feel good about the gift of feedback that's being given, or he can be crushed by the fact that, wow, 3 people said something negative, quote unquote, about my presentation. How do you also overcome the same when judged in a contest? Well, if you're judging a contest, that one's hard. That if you come in second, you have to really understand that somebody has to come in first, and it may not be you. Marianne?
I just wanted to say, when I was a newbie Toastmaster, a couple of you know Barry Byron.
Mm-hmm. You're back on mute.
Barry talked about my hair covering my eye and said it was disconnecting me from the audience. Now, I was highly insulted by this comment because I just had eye surgery and I couldn't really see very well. So I was very insulted by this, but I've come to realize that everyone in the Toastmaster audience is there to help you and is really rooting for you. And it's really just one person's opinion too. But she was giving me an audience member's perspective, and I should have been open to it, and I wasn't at that time. But I have since learned to accept things, and I might not agree with it ultimately, and that's okay. But it's like you have to listen to it and process it and decide if that feedback's for you, whether or not you're going to take it. So that's just my 2 cents on that. And, I hope that helps you, Karthika.
We also, in our club, we have one probably founding member of our club who, when he evaluates, he doesn't always, he'll pick a small part of the speech and just give feedback on that. And his feedback doesn't really apply to the rest. So I knew somebody was about to get an evaluation from him, and I wrote him a note saying, take it with a grain of salt if he's off the mark. And he really appreciated that because he was about to feel devastated about giving a great presentation. So make sure you know that you're assigning good evaluators to speakers and they're not going to be destructive. Joni.
I have a contribution and a question. Now, Toastmaster focuses on I statements, and that's how I believe that we wouldn't actually be judged, because how you would connect with me is not the same way that you would connect with David. It's not the same way you'd connect with Andy, because it's a sense of humor thing. So my question is, if you have to give improvements, could you say, in my view, I believe that I see nothing wrong. I think this is the perfect speech. You knocked it out of the park for me. However, because you stuttered, sometimes it can affect how.
Oh,
The West Indies have got Joni again. The internet's fallen over.
she was just getting to the good part. Okay, we'll come back to her. David, are you telling me it's time?
Yeah, I just had the hand raised so you'd see that the timer was there. I don't care. I mean, it's up to the people running the meeting. If, we want to have more time for conversation. I think it's good conversation, but I was told 20 minutes or so. So we're a little bit past that.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Jack, thank you so much for your presentation. Reflecting on what you said about that person who gave a presentation on selling product, and when you gave him your evaluation for the first time and then second time, do you think maybe you did something wrong? Do you think maybe you need to change your tactic of telling him what he needs to do?
That's quite possible. I was not trying to defend myself, but I also had the manual to rely on and say, the manual asked the question, did the audience get instructed as they expected to? And the answer was no. And both times I checked with the audience and said, did anybody feel that they were equipped to walk out? So the second time I asked the audience, because I didn't want to be the one lowering the hammer, so to speak, on him and have him feel that I was the Lone Ranger thinking this and everybody else thought it was good. And he accomplished the goal. It's a
One
good
other
question,
thing
though.
to keep in mind, because I have seen Jack ask somebody to redo his speech. We can't require that somebody redoes a speech, but we can encourage them to redo it if they have not met their objectives. So they don't have to comply with you. We're not the police when we give an evaluation. But if somebody didn't meet their objectives, I think it's a fair thing to encourage.
And remember, we're asking them because the idea of completing an assignment is not to check a box, but really to learn something that they have ventured out to a club meeting to deliver a presentation to learn. And if we let them leave without learning what they wanted to, we're not providing the service. Now they have the option to say, you know what, I really don't care about this. I'm not going to do it again, but we at least should give them the opportunity to do so. Deb, I'll get to you in a second. Sherry.
Hi. You went over, so you had a chart which stated how I felt, what you did, this made me feel, I wish you had, and next time try. And then you also mentioned that don't be that person who asks for improvement. However, it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that I wish you had, and next time try sounds like a way of asking for improvement without using the words in the
Yes.
word improvement.
And
Would you
that's
agree?
what I was saying, cut that part out if it's not needed.
Don't use those words. Just
Right. Yeah, don't use those words. Just stick to the first part.
next
Here's what
time
you did,
try.
how it made me feel.
I wish you had, but also use I wish you had, next time try.
Well, I would, if the speech was flawless, quote unquote, there would be no, I wish next time you would try this, because there's no reason.
Okay, so stick to the first three is what you're saying.
Yes, stick to, yes, exactly.
One's above. Okay, thank you. Okay.
You're welcome. Deb. And then Traka after Deb.
Thank you. I just want to say that I learned a lot when I was an inexperienced evaluator, and I gave an evaluation to someone who was doing body language, and they didn't move one single part of their body. And that's all I could see. Couldn't see the forest for the trees. But I learned to listen differently as a result of having done that evaluation in that way. And the person did not receive any of my feedback because I had an experienced Toastmaster that was a member of our club at the time. And she said, you need to go apologize to that person. So I went down and I apologized. I said, I'm inexperienced, blah, blah, blah. And he said, oh, I know I did great. So I guess what I'm saying is he knows he did great. So I didn't deliver the message very well to him, despite the fact that I was so focused on you didn't move. The object was to move and you didn't move. I didn't talk about anything else that he did well. Didn't talk about the message, didn't talk about what a great speech, how well written and how it flowed well. Didn't do any of that. Oh, I learned a very valuable lesson. And I looked at, why didn't he hear? Why didn't he realize that he didn't meet the objective? I didn't deliver a good evaluation. So I learned how to listen and always look for the things that they do well too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for that, Deb. Traka.
Hi. So I just, for the benefit of the group, I just also want to say that one of the reasons, like I'm reading a book by an author named Kim Scott, and she talks about ruinous empathy. And that is where you don't tell people the thing they need to hear the most. And so I think shying away from telling people, like the assignment was body language and we're not going to talk about that, or whatever, like not making it land. You are not doing them a favor because they came here to learn skills, right? And so I feel that that's almost like it's our duty to be able to report on the things that they're doing because they came to get better. And I'm in a Toastmaster group where there's this woman, she's been a member for 30 years of Toastmasters, and she's still not a good speaker. And I would be mortified if that were me, like I actually want to get better. And I take it personally when somebody's not giving me the feedback that I need to hear to get better. I'm offended by that. And so I also want to remind people, like, it can be really hard to give good feedback. In fact, this is an advanced group. And the first time I did evaluations, I had to evaluate Joni, who is a very charismatic speaker. And I was like, oh, she hears that all the time. I'm going to challenge myself to say something that she doesn't normally hear that about. And so challenging yourself to become a really good evaluator and to be able to tell people what they need to hear. I think there's a lot of internal work that it takes on our part to say the things that need to get said. And also, like, I had to change, Karthika, to your point, I had to change my relationship with that feedback. I'm like, somebody is really investing a lot of courage to tell me what would make me significantly better. And I'm like, oh, I used to get really hurt and I might not speak to somebody for like 3 days. And I would have to really sit back and reflect on that. And I'm like, That's love. That
Yep.
is somebody who genuinely cares about me enough to go out on a limb and tell me something to drastically improve my skills. Like, what a gift, you know? So I had to change my own relationship with feedback in order to be able to improve. So anyway, just a
Well,
couple thoughts.
You set that up perfectly, because one of our members in Princeton Toastmasters, when she moved to start her own club, left us with a framed quote that said, "Feedback is the most valuable gift." And we show it, we keep it in the back of the room where guests come and sign in every meeting, so we all remember. And we actually call our evaluation section the gift of feedback. And just trasa, what we want to do is, we don't, a lot of people think when you give constructive, or I don't want to use the word negative feedback, but we're being not nice. And we opt to be nice and forego giving the feedback. We don't tell the people how many ahs they said. And they walk out thinking, wow, I never said the word ah, I'm a fantastic speaker, when they actually had 30 of them. So I tell people not to be nice, with the word nice meaning nothing inside me cares enough. NICE. Nothing inside me cares enough. That's what being nice is when you're being an evaluator. On that note, I am going to turn control of the meeting back to our Toastmaster, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Jack. More than your presentation, we got to know many things by probing you with our questions. I think you enjoyed our questions. Yeah. We have one more speaker who is lined up for today. He is a DTM. He is the past or the previous president of Online Presenters. Let me introduce Graham Cairns. Graham Cairns will be giving a speech tonight from the Effective Coaching Path Level 1, Evaluation and Feedback Speech 1. Over to you, Graham.
In answer to David's question, yes, 5 to 7. Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests. Tonight I want to tell you a story of grit, of determination, of courage, of gambling it all on the toss of a dice, as it were, of facing down hostility armed with nothing more than a sense of humour and an unquenchable desire to see more. I want to tell you a story of a heroine. I want to tell you a story of Ida Pfeiffer. Ida who? Now, some of you here have heard of Ida Pfeiffer, but for everybody else, it's a what? Ida to me is a hero. She is someone whose sheer oomph is something that I want to emulate. Frau Pfeiffer was born in a time when women were supposed to be devoted to Kinder, Kutscher, Kirche, that is, children, kitchen, church. And yet she decided to move away from that, having outlived her husband and having sent her strapping young lads out into the world on their own. She decided to travel and then write about it for profit, to pay for even more travels. Think of her as one of the first travel bloggers. She traveled for the sheer joy of it, and yet she found a way to make it pay. And that's something that I'm still struggling to do, I have to tell you. Ida Pfeiffer's books became international bestsellers, translated into European and non-European languages, and yet she was a relatively poor widow in a society that saw her role as staying at home, wearing the widow's weeds, and remembering her place. And that place is important. She'd been born into the Germanic equivalent of the Victorian era, and in many ways, the Biedermeier was like the Victorian age on steroids. A key concept of the Biedermeier worldview was the notion of separate spheres. That is, that men and women had entirely distinct areas where they were to be active, and that those areas were dictated to them not just by biology, but by divine will. And so to do anything different was not only potentially scandalous, it was blasphemous. And yet Ida Pfeiffer would break out of all of those restrictions. After a loveless marriage, she was widowed at a relatively early age and was free to travel. Her first trip to the Middle East, to visit the Holy Lands. She took in the places of traditional pilgrimage, but then decided to just keep going and took a trip to Egypt and Rome. 9 months before she returned to Vienna. Once at home, she sat down and, in a blaze of inspiration, compiled all of the notes that she'd scribbled into 14 notebooks into a 2-volume bestseller. She discovered a formula that she would use for the rest of her life. Writing of her travels sold well. She would then use the proceeds from those books to fund further travel. The books were praised for their simple, matter-of-fact reporting, especially on things that male authors had neglected, like the life of women and families in other countries, if you like, the domestic realm of faraway places. She had a keen eye for detail, and the books could essentially be read as tour guides for trips, whether you were going to go on one or just read about it. She went to Iceland in 1845, for example, and after an epic bout of seasickness, travelled to Scandinavia and then headed home again to Austria, where she again published her travel notes as a book. This time she was only at home for 7 months and then set off again in 1846 on a much larger trip, this time circling the world. She boarded a Danish ship bound for Brazil, and when the ship hit terrible storms off the east coast of South America, Ida didn't cower below. No, she had herself tied to the mast so she could experience the full measure and force of the tempest. When taking an excursion through a rainforest, Ida Pfeiffer was suddenly confronted by a bandit who threatened her with a knife. So how did she react? Like any good Victorian woman, she cowered away. No, she didn't. She pulled out her own knife and stabbed him. After that, by the way, Ida always carried pistols wherever she went. She even made her way to Baghdad, where she visited a harem, and now that was something that no male European could have been allowed to do, and it was a sensation for her reading public. She trekked to Persia by camel caravan, but before leaving, she had all of her notes shipped home. I mean, they were vital for the next book that she was going to write. And then, like many an air traveller today, her luggage went missing. You know, those notes that she shipped home for safekeeping? When she got there, they weren't. And so she had to wait and wait. 18 months. Oh, every time I think of that story, I'm tempted to do an extra backup on my computer data just to make sure. But they did eventually arrive, and she reworked them into her most famous book, Ein Frauenfahrt um die Welt, or A Woman's Journey Around the World. Then there were another couple of mammoth trips and fascinating books before she finally returned to Vienna to die in October 1858. So what's the significance of this amazing figure? Well, Ida Pfeiffer helped usher in an age when even ordinary people could travel and explore. Those who read her book saw a world of possibilities opening up before them, a world that was not the unique preserve of the extraordinary explorer, but a world which we could venture into. And yet she was a widow of modest means, bucking all of the traditions of hidebound society and not letting those traditions, those conventions get in her way. She is a heroine to me, and I'd like her to be your inspiration as well. Next time you've got an idea, but you lack the oomph to carry it through, think of Ida Pfeiffer. Next time you feel you've got to conform to what society expects, just remember, you can do more. When you're faced between staying on the well-worn path or striking out on a new venture, ask yourself, what would Ida Pfeiffer do? Because there are alternatives to the ordinary, and you owe it to yourself to at least explore those options. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should simply throw caution to the wind and pursue life-changing opportunities on a whim. No, what I am urging you to do is what Ida did. Consider what is really important to you. Do a plus and minus assessment. But if the minuses are about what other people will think or what's normal, then don't let them become a millstone around the neck of your dreams. Be like Ida Pfeiffer and be brave. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you for your presentation. So, be a Roman when you are in Rome. That's a message I got. And as well, take it to the world. Okay. So we are already running out of time and we wouldn't be having table topics for today. Let's get into our important section for today's meeting. It's the general evaluation. General evaluator Marianne will guide us to have a round-robin evaluation as well as evaluate our speaker. Marianne, over to you.
Well, good evening again, everybody. Tonight, I'm your general evaluator, and I would like to introduce Jack Levitt, who will conduct a round-robin evaluation of Graham Cairns' speech that he just gave. Now, we just got some new techniques. I hope you'll take this opportunity to employ them. Please welcome Jack back.
Thanks, Marianne. Who would like to be the first person to offer feedback to Graham?
Can I
Asil,
say?
how you say it?
Thank you, Jack, and thank you, Graham, for your speech today. You're mostly wearing your clothes on. Some parts missing, like you need to do pauses and speak a little bit slower. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Marianne, how did Graham make you feel?
Graham, you made me feel very interested in your subject, Ms. Pfeiffer, Ida Pfeiffer, because you were very animated when you spoke. But one of the things that I thought would be a little more helpful to help us visualize it was a picture of her or some of the places that she's been. So using some visuals would have really brought Ida to life for us. Back to you, Jack.
Thanks, Marianne. Who else? Andre.
Yes, thank you, Jack. Graham, I really enjoy your speech. You're an experienced speaker and you showing it every time. But this particular speech was really polished and it made me feel curious to find out what was going to happen next. When your story went on, there were new developments. I wish you had played with us, play with the members of audience, ask us perhaps a question or two. So are we following you? Are we still with you on your journey? I think that would make us feel important and it would draw us more into the curiosity of your speech. Overall, great speech. I enjoyed. Back to you.
Thank you. Trasa.
I felt like I was ready to whip out my passport and book a flight around the world immediately. That was so fun. What you did was open my eyes to a period of travel where women typically didn't travel, and they especially didn't travel alone. I mean, that was really beautiful, and I love the historical aspect of it. To Andre's point, I wish you would have invited me into the story, like invited me as if I was the traveler and thinking about like how I would handle these particular things. And also, it made me feel like I want to read her book, know absolutely more about her, and I really I appreciated how you brought up the women's aspect of things as well, and that point of view, and your final comments about words of encouragement and how to frame her. I wish I had that off the tip of my tongue so that I could use that going forward. It was very inspiring. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sherry.
Hi. Great speech, Graham. So you did great storytelling. You brought her story to life. You gave vivid descriptions and engaging anecdotes that painted a picture of her journeys and the challenges she overcame. This made me feel curious, enthusiastic, connected to Ida Pfeiffer and her adventures. It made me feel inspired to learn more about Ida's life and travels. Next time, pacing. At times, the speech felt rushed. So I would just implore you to pause at key points and allow your audience to reflect. Back to you.
Thank you, Sherry. the birthday boy, Andrew.
Thanks, Jack. When Graham was delivering this speech, which I enjoyed very much, one thought came to my mind, and that was my visit to the U.S. Holocaust Museum. When everybody came into the museum, they were given a passport with somebody's passport, picture, and story about them. Imagine Graham was delivering this in a workshop, and each person in the workshop got a passport so they could relive a part of that story that she was going through, just like they do in the Holocaust Museum. It really makes it emotionally connected all the time that you're there. It's the only thing that I wanted to share with you because I felt much the way many other people felt. I was connected. I felt like I was on the journey. I was saying, you know, I was looking at cruises and there's a 142-day cruise that goes around the world. That would be great to take. I'd take Tracy with me.
Fantastic. Graham, just to wrap up, listening to your speech, I was inspired. And what inspired me most was the energy you brought to telling the story. Your energy came through the screen, and I actually felt energized, and I was ready to bolt out the door as soon as we ended the meeting and go on my first adventure. But then you said, okay, don't do it on a whim, plan it out, have pluses and minuses. So I'm glad you tempered me and I didn't run off and, you know, do something crazy like hop in a plane and, you know, fly it somewhere. So it's your energy and your enthusiasm and passion for what you talk about. Passion is authentic, and authenticity wins an audience every time. We heard the feedback about visual aids. Your background is a microphone. You had the opportunity to put the picture that Jim has there, or maybe a world map, or photos of her books from Amazon or something like that. But definitely an inspiring speech. Thank you. And I'll turn this back to General Evaluator Mary Ann.
Well, thank you, sir. Well done. Now, we have some reporters to come in, but we are short on time. So as I call you, please make your report very quick. Timer David Carr, how'd we do on time today?
I think I've reported all I need to report. Even though Graham says he needs to strip a few words from that speech, he was well under 7 minutes. So you win.
All righty. And our counter, Sherry Blake, let's hear from you.
Thank you, Marianne. Jack had some ums, ahs, and so's. David Carr had a couple ums and ahs. Kurtika had an ah. Teresa had a so and a you know. Graham had an ah. Marianne had an from what I was able to gather, because I got so into everyone's round robin. But that's what I recorded for this evening. Back to you, Marianne.
Well, thank you kindly, ma'am. Jim Barber is our grammarian today. Jim, please.
Yes, Madam General Evaluator, to the best of my knowledge, everybody used the word of the day sometime this evening. Congratulations. As far as what everybody else said, I'm going to focus on one thing that Graham said. Of course, he used many, many phrases. He's a grammarian's delight. But during his explanation of being a chat monitor, he said that the chat monitor was exactly what it says on the tin. I like that description because I didn't know what it was. I hadn't heard it before, and I love to be challenged. I looked it up, and it turns out that what it says on the tin is an English expression, and I gather also an Australian expression, but it's not common in the United States. Nevertheless, I applaud your using it because you used it where we could guess from context exactly what it meant. As I say, I like to be challenged. I just wanted to say you've done good.
Our next reporter is Andrei Smolenko, who is watching everybody. Andrei.
Thank you, Marianne. Yes, I've been watching everyone carefully, and what I did, I just placed a few screenshots in the chat. The first screenshot, I think, demonstrates how members of online presenters and any club can promote their club by showing off proudly online presenters' back screens. because they are really useful too. At the same time, I would like to praise our guest, is Deborah, who positioned herself perfectly right next to the palm tree, not covering it all. And just a little note for our guest, Judy. I'm not sure what it was intended. However, whatever the background is behind you, you look right at the front of it. And I was really curious to see what's behind, and I could just barely see it. And overall, we did well. Back to you, Marianne.
Well, thank you, sir. And speaking of chat monitor, Graham has been our chat monitor for tonight.
Yes, I have indeed. Not much I can report on because the only comments that were made were mostly being made by me. I did throw up a link, by the way, to the Google splash page on Ida Pfeiffer. Genuinely worth going to check this woman out. She is fascinating. But thank you, everybody, for your contributions in the chat. There was nothing that I needed to report on, and everybody was mostly circumspect. So thank you.
All right, now I will give you my general evaluation. Tonight was a very unusual meeting in that we had a guest speaker tonight, and Jack gave us his presentation, which was a lot of wonderful information, but I think I even enjoyed the conversation afterwards with the Q&A because it really brought out a lot of really great thoughts for all of us to think about as we're evaluating. So that to me was the highlight, and we're keeping it short because we're at the end of the meeting. So back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
That was quick. Thank you, General Evaluator Marian. Before I joined Toastmasters, I thought Toastmasters is all about public speaking and enhancing your leadership skills. But now I understand, joining online presenters, it's truly international. You get to understand different cultures. You get to meet different people who are from different backgrounds. This gives you an opportunity to present yourself before a worldwide audience. Okay, to wrap up today's session, we got a good idea of how to evaluate an individual, not to get or not to be offended by the evaluation and not to hurt others by your evaluation. Overall, the idea framework, identifying and defining your goals, define the strategies to meet the goals, establish a timeline to meet the defined goals, and also have a follow-up that you meet the goals on time. Okay, it's time for us to hand over the session to our president, Marianne. Over to you, Marianne, and officially I'm closing the Toastmasters meeting for today. Over to you, Marianne.
Thank you kindly, and we can end the recording, but I will continue to visit with our guests. So Evelyn, oh no, Evelyn looks like she dropped. So